Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of the APLAR Podcast. I'm Prithvi Gaur, a student of medicine from Pune, India, and we have with us Dr. Chris Wincup to discuss social media for academia, medical practice, and patients. Dr. Wincup, thank you so much for joining us here today. Please, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Great. Well, thank you very much for the kind invitation to speak with you. My name is Chris Wincup. I'm a rheumatology clinical research fellow at University College London in England. I have a bit of social media experience in that I've helped the British Society for Rheumatology, APLAR and the ACR with some social media activities mainly relating to conferences.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I would say that's rather modest. You don numerous hats indeed, and it's an honor to host a veteran like yourself. Let's begin. Why would you say it's important for clinicians and academicians to integrate social media into their practice?
So I think from a clinical perspective, it's important to have a knowledge of social media, even if you're not someone that uses it. Social media is very widely accessible throughout the world now. And even if you're a clinician and you're not on social media, the chances are your patients are likely to be on social media. So it's good to have at least a fundamental understanding of what is out there and what it involves. My feeling is that patients will often use social media as a means of finding out information, much like doing a Google search on the internet. People may look for answers to questions and support on social media. So it's very important that people are aware that this is a source of information, sometimes a source of incorrect information. So therefore, a small understanding of social media is probably important. In terms of the more academic side, social media does have a number of important roles. It can help foster collaboration, and it can also help you engage and reach the people that you're looking to participate in studies. So it does give you a wider reach and makes it a bit easier to contact people that otherwise it may be somewhat more tricky to engage with.
That's definitely true. I believe social media condenses the medical fraternity and brings us all together a little bit closer.
Quite right.
Let's move on. How can physicians and researchers make the most of social media?
So I can give some examples of where I've found it useful in terms of research. So a few years ago, we were looking to do a lab-based project investigating some subtle laboratory abnormalities in patients with lupus and antiphospholipid syndrome. So diseases that we see fairly frequently in clinic, but on the whole are quite rare. And we were interested to know whether this was something, or the research question was something that was of interest to patients. So there's an increasing focus on making sure that our research is appropriate for the people who are participating, whether it's answering questions that are directly relevant to patients. And so we were faced with the problem of how can we communicate and find out whether this is something of interest to a group of patients with a relatively rare illness. Around that time, it was pre-pandemic, so we could host people in small groups and often would do small focus groups with perhaps 5 to 10 patients in one go, which is often challenging because you don't get a large response. And so we decided that we wanted to have a look at how we can find out what's important research for patients on perhaps a wider scale. And so we developed a short questionnaire about the study, asking patients whether they would be interested in participating, what research questions they have, whether they felt that this would be useful. And we shared it with some of the medical charities here in the UK, Lupus UK and APS Support UK, who were able to share it on their social media platforms. And what we found was within about 4 weeks, we'd had over 500 responses, which was a massive surprise for all of us. If we were to try and arrange face-to-face focus groups with 500 patients, it would have gone on for several months. And what we noticed when we looked at the responses was that when we shared the questionnaire on our own personal social media accounts that we were getting a few responses each day, and enough, but nothing massive. And then when the charities shared it, we suddenly saw large peaks in the number of responses. So we found that social media was quite useful for engaging with patients who may have a rare illness. We found that it gave patients the opportunity to have their voice heard and directly input into our research to make sure that we were asking the right question and doing things in the correct way. And we subsequently published that, and we've repeated it in conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and a number of other autoimmune rheumatic diseases with success. So from a research perspective, it was a very useful way of engaging with patients, making sure what we were doing was appropriate and getting some large scale results. In terms of importance of social media for clinicians, it's slightly more tricky in this regard. I can understand why many clinicians may not want to use social media, may have reservations about social media. But in terms of the benefits for me as a clinician, I do find it a very easy way of engaging with people who I may otherwise not be able to engage with, 10 or 15 years ago. One of the really interesting things I find about social media is you can ask a world leading expert a direct question on social media, just sat in your own home. So you do have this huge group of experts who are active and engaging on social media, who you can discuss things with, who you may be able to ask questions about their papers and things like that. And in many cases, people are happy to reply and start those conversations in a manner that would be very, very difficult without the use of social media.
Thank you so much for your insightful thoughts. Please stay tuned for the rest of our conversation, in which we will discuss whether social media is a reliable source of medical information and how physicians can deal with trolls and misinformation on social media. Thank you.